Hi guys, this is David here for the bartenderhq.com podcast, and on this week's show we're doing a bit of a questions and answers session. I've had a few questions in from a guy called Dean Patel over on SpeakPipe, and we're going to answer his questions on this week's show. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Welcome to the bartenderhq.com podcast. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at bartenderhq. Here's your host, David Eden-Sangwell.
So as you can see guys, it's a bit more of a relaxed show this week. I'm not in front of the green screen. We're not going to put a whole bunch of stuff up here behind me. I'm in the garden. It's a really lovely day. It's the beginning of October 2015, and I don't think we're going to get too many nice days like this for the rest of the year. So I really wanted to make the most of it and get out here. I've got a bit of gardening to do in a bit, so do excuse the length of the grass behind me. We'll be sorting all that out, and obviously if I get attacked by a cat, please please don't let that distract you too much. But on this week's show, I've had a few messages through from Dean on SpeakPipe, and I wanted to get into a few of those and have a bit of a chat with you. So I really like getting these messages through SpeakPipe. For some reason there's a bit of distortion on the ones that have come through from Dean. Not sure what the issue is, whether it's with SpeakPipe's end or what, but I know they've updated their systems just recently, so hopefully there shouldn't be any problems in future. So let's get straight into it. The first question that Dean actually sent to me was about T.G.I Friday's recipe manuals. Now, he was asking how he might be able to get hold of one of these. Now, the recipe manual at T.G.I Fridays in the UK is very, very nicely laid out, and this is basically the reason I think that Dean is looking to get hold of one of them. They're very nicely laid out. It's very easy to see the ingredients that you need to be able to identify the methods and that kind of thing. And the problem though is that these are kind of a company, like a trade secret sort of thing almost. So there is a section at the front of them from back in my day, which is basically that the the manuals are handed out on a need-to-know basis to the bartenders, so it's not something that they are at liberty to give out to people. You may find an ex-bartender that's got hold of one and is willing to part with it, but you would be on, that bartender themselves would be on slightly shaky ground if it came out that you had got hold of it from them. It's unfortunate because it is a very, very good basis for learning cocktails from, especially the older ones. I don't know what the manuals are like nowadays. I don't have access to them as I no longer work with them. But the other thing that Dean was asking is, if it's not available, what is the best sort of place to get hold of a recipe book? Now, the one that I would recommend is the Difford's Guide to Cocktails. This used to be called the Source Guide to Cocktails for the first few volumes. It's now the Difford's Guide to Cocktails. It's put together by a guy called Simon Difford, and it is an absolutely superb collection of drinks. I think nowadays it's somewhere in the region of 3,000-4,000 that's in there. Now, Difford's Guide and Source Guide to Cocktails at one point in the distant past did used to provide, in fact when I started at Fridays, they provided all the images and put together the menu that was on the bar at Fridays. So a lot of the cocktails are very, very similar in their layout. One of the nice things that used to be in there, I'm not sure if it's in the latest editions because I don't have the latest copy of the Difford's Guide, was they would have a section where they would take 10 main ingredients, 10 main spirits, liquors and vermouths, I think it was, and they would put together a list of all of the drinks that you could make with just those 10 items. So it was a really good foundation for if you wanted to put together a small home bar that you could make a whole bunch of different drinks from. Now, it did assume that you would have things like the juices, the dairy items, and that sort of thing available. All this kind of stuff that you can get hold of nice and cheaply. So I do definitely recommend getting hold of the Difford's Guide to Cocktails, and if possible, you can also get hold of the Source Guides, which are the older ones, so you might be able to find those knocking around somewhere. In terms of the layout for the Fridays recipe manual, The way that it was, I mean, everything is in ounces for Fridays because it's a worldwide company, which I find much easier to deal with than the millilitres that are more prevalent in the UK. That's why I try and include both in our cocktails on the Bartender HQ website. Now, the layout was that you would have your list of ingredients, starting with your base cocktail, your base spirit, which was generally 1 1/4 ounces, and then the rest of your ingredients in there. And then on the other side, you would have things like a liquor category, which is the way that it worked in the old days. So a category 1 drink would be a well spirit with a gun mixer, so a cola, say vodka and coke, a gin and tonic if you've got tonic on the guns, that kind of thing. A liquor 2 cocktail would be a single liquor with a juice mixer. A liquor 3 would be a single liquor with a special mixer. Now that was things like your pina colada mix, your lime mixes, grenadine, simple syrups, that sort of stuff. A liquor 4 would be any multi-liquor drink or a blended drink, anything that comes from the blender. Mojitos for a long while were a liquor 3, but then they were upgraded to a liquor 4 because of the time and the process that it takes to make them. And basically those liquor categories would tell you straight away what the price of the drink was, which meant that bartenders, if they were making their own concoctions and that sort of thing, they'd be able to charge you accurately for those drinks, not have to charge you for every individual ingredient. I believe that system has now gone away, and they're just individually pricing the cocktails. But the old liquor system was very useful. So this was one of the items that you'd have. So you'd have your recipe, and then you'd have what liquor category you'd got, what glassware the drink was served in. You'd have a procedure section, which was quite simple actually. You would have working, which meant it was made in something other than the service glass. You'd have working shaker or working blender, which was obviously whether it was a shaker or a mixer. In fact, working mixer was the spindle mixer drinks. That was basically shaking cocktails, but made on the spindle mixer to save time. You'd also have muddled, churn, built, shaken, shake with ice and strain, stir with ice and strain, that kind of thing to let you know the exact procedure for the drinks as well. It was all right there in that recipe book, and then there was a garnish section as well for what the garnish would be, and all the garnishes would be based on the sensitivities that you had, again all built into that recipe manual. It was a hell of a good book that would give you a lot of details about various different drinks. So what I'm actually going to put together, guys, is I'm going to put together a downloadable recipe sheet, which, when we were at Fridays, you'd have the certification test that I've mentioned in the past, where you'd be writing out all of your cocktails. I'm going to put together basically a blank version of this so that you can use it to memorise your drinks. If you've not seen it already, have a quick look at my book, which is the How to Memorise Cocktails the Easy Way. That will give you a lot of help as well. But if you want to click to download this recipe manual sheet, and you can basically translate the cocktails that you already know into this recipe format, it does make it easier to remember, and you can kind of use it as a PDF, or you can just print off as many as you want. So that's going to be available from the podcast notes. If you go over to bartenderhq.com and click on the latest podcast, you'll be able to get that sheet to work from. Okay, the second message that Dean left me was actually about Flair training. He's watched the podcast that we did on it, and talking about how to drill. I think it was our hardcore training podcast. And we were talking about literally just practicing the same move for 5 minutes. Say, putting an alarm on your phone and literally not practicing any other move until you nail it. Just banging that same move. If you're trying to do a forearm bump, for example, to a stall, literally just hitting that move over and over again for 5 minutes. You will do it so many times, and you would not believe the amount of difference that something like that can make, just to how much more precise you will be in that short amount of time on an individual move. Now, he's mentioned that he also actually videos himself when he's flairing, which is a really good tip. and especially if you've got one of the latest iPhones, anything from a 5S and up, you can do the high-speed video. You can film at 120 or 240 frames a second, and then play it back in slow motion and see exactly if you're bumping too early or if you're bumping too late, or if the reason that your bottle's not going into the tin properly is because you're over-rotating or under-rotating, and that's really, really useful. So thank you for that tip, Dean. I'm surprised I haven't mentioned that actually before, because it is something that I do myself, and I've filmed the guys over at the Flair Club as well on well, it has been on a Sunday night, but if any of you guys are in Birmingham and you want to come along, it's going to be Monday nights from 8 till 10 at Reflex Arcade, and you can come along and join in at the West Midlands Flair Club. So the other thing that he's mentioned is when he's learning a full sequence of moves, when he's learning one of these blocks that I've mentioned in the past as well, it's not a problem if you're doing, say, an exchange between one item and another, to making sure that you're catching the first item, launching the second one, and then allowing that to drop while you make sure that you're nailing that exchange. So don't focus too much on trying to get to that second item. Just make sure you're trying to throw it in an accurate way and throw it into the right sort of zone around your body that you're going to be catching it in. If you can work on that and not have to concentrate on the catch, then you are going to get the exchange a lot better and not be trying to throw your body around to try and get to those items. So thanks very much for that tip there, Dean. And now he's also asked about something he's found online called tips certification, and our American friends, any of you guys over in the US will probably know a little bit more about this, probably than I do in fact. But as I understand it, the tips certification is designed for bartenders, and it's like an alcohol awareness course. Now, going back to episode 14 of the podcast, right in the early days before I actually had videos going along with it, I spoke to Brian Webber from the Bartender Journey podcast, and this is something that I asked him about, was certifications for bartenders in the US, because I know there are a lot of bartending schools out there that work along this sort of lines, and will do certifications for bartenders that you can kind of take along to your job and say, look, this is the certification level that I've reached. Now, the TIPS certification is actually an alcohol awareness thing, as far as I'm aware. This is what Brian was telling me on the podcast, and it is essentially so that bartenders know not to overserve people, to not serve people when they're too drunk, and to be checking IDs and all that kind of thing. So it's not a bartending certification in terms of your skill level, and it is really something that only applies in the US, because obviously the licensing laws in the UK are a little bit different. The best thing that you can do if you want to further yourself in the bars in terms of alcohol awareness is probably to go and take the personal license yourself, which is what you would need to become a manager and a general manager, and then later on a designated premises supervisor in the UK. That would be the closest thing to the TIPS certification in the US, so it is more about the alcohol awareness. But yes, certainly having the personal license will definitely help you in the UK if you're looking to get into management positions or event bartending and that sort of thing as well. So it basically means that you're very, very serious about what you do and that you're looking to progress. So that's, hopefully that helps you out a little bit. If you want to learn a little bit more, go and check out podcast number 14 with Brian Webber. That's with 1B. You can search that on Bartender HQ and it'll come right up there. And have a listen to that podcast. Some really interesting stuff, because Brian works, he runs his own podcast in the US, the Bartender Journey, and he's also the podcast official podcast partner for Tales of the Cocktail. Now, the last question that he's asked me is about how to make a signature move your own. Now, from the way that he's phrased the question on the SpeakPipe, it sounds like he's sort of saying, how do I stop other people from doing my move? Sadly, there's no way. You can't really copyright a routine. The only thing I think you could do, and now this comes from my background with the Magic Shop, is I know that Penn and Teller had a legal battle with a certain magician, I believe in the Netherlands, over one of his routines that over one of Teller's routines rather, that this magician was trying to sell online, sell the secrets to and how to perform it. Now, with magic, and as with Flair, you can't kind of copyright something. You can't copyright or trademark the way that you do a routine. So what I believe Teller had to do was actually copyright it as a play. So it was the script and the book for a play, which was then able to be used in court to stop someone doing it. Now, I don't for a moment think that you are going to be trying to take people to court if they're using a move that you have used before. However, the judges at these Flair competitions are very, very knowledgeable, and if you're doing something that has not been done before, they will identify that, they'll see that, and they'll be impressed. You'll get your points for your originality. So if you're looking to really push the envelope, if you're doing something completely original, I mean, you can put a video online. Obviously, that will have a date on it that you uploaded it. And if nobody's got a video previous to that that's got this move in it, then, you know, that could be used if you were having some sort of a dispute with a competition over the originality score that you're getting, something along those lines. I can't see that it's actually going to be a huge issue, but if you're being creative, by all means share it with the community. This isn't... with Flair bartending, it's something where having different people around the world coming up with new moves and new routines and being able to share them online is just pushing everyone forward. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants with Flair bartending, as with most other stuff. In that the moves that are the very basics had to be come up with by somebody. You know, even 1.5 flip to pour, like Tom Cruise does in the movie. That kind of thing was created by somebody. Who knows who? It doesn't matter who. Everyone's going to do that move, and nobody's going to sort of go, oh, well, that's such and such as a move. It's your unique style is more about the way that you present your moves, the style that you have with it. If you watched Christian Delpeche and another bartender do exactly the same moves in exactly the same order, you would still be able to tell on a motion capture type thing which one's Christian, which one's another bartender. Because his style and the way that he moves and the way that his body moves while he's flaring is so distinct. So there's not such a problem with moves being stolen, I don't think. I think if I was to put a routine out there and somebody was to use a part of it, that's actually flattering to me that they want to use moves that I've come up with. And if they can make them better, that's absolutely fine with me. So don't worry about people stealing moves. Don't worry about people stealing little bits of your presentation. It doesn't matter. Unless you are literally in the top 1%, I would think, of bartenders. It's something that we all work together, we all sort of create moves, we all are inspired by other people's moves, so I don't think it's something that you need to worry about people stealing your moves and then going, no, this was mine in the first place. If you're worried about it, do pop a video on Facebook. I've seen your stuff on Instagram, you've got some great moves and it's really interesting to watch you. So yeah, don't worry too much about it. On the subject of Instagram, obviously we're Bartender HQ Pics on Instagram. I'm going to be uploading a few more little Flair videos and that sort of thing in the coming weeks. And yeah, follow me, I'll follow you back if you're a Flair bartender or a bartender of any sort and you're putting some cool stuff up there. Yeah, I'd love to see what you're putting up. So I think that's going to kind of round it off for this week, guys. I just wanted to mention one thing. If you want to support this podcast without it costing you a penny, I would love for you guys to try out Audible.com. If you watch podcasts or you listen to podcasts at all, I'm sure you will have heard people talking about Audible.com. It is the audiobook provider from Amazon. Now, they do a 30-day free trial where you're going to get a free audiobook from Audible, and it doesn't cost you a penny. And and if you want to continue with a subscription, then you get credits, and it's charged monthly differently in different countries. But as long as you cancel your subscription in time, it won't cost you a penny, and you'll get to keep this audiobook. Now, you may be wondering why I'm talking about audiobooks on a bartending podcast, but one of the audiobooks that I went for straight away was called The Drunken Botanist. This is by Amy Stewart, and it's designed for bartenders and people that are interested in spirits. It talks all about the different botanicals that are in gins, the different stuff that's put into different spirits, and also how you can use different botanicals and different plants in your cocktails to create absolutely, completely unique cocktails that nobody else is doing. It talks about how different flavours work together. It talks about all of that kind of thing, and I'd really encourage you to give it a look. Now, I am not a person that can sit down with a book and read for hours on end. It really doesn't work for me. I never find the time, and I'll be honest, I think a lot of bartenders are quite like me. I can sit down with a recipe book and see some cool cocktails in there and give them a try, but I'm not going to sit there just reading through. Now, Audible lets you take it anywhere with you on the go, on your device, on your iPhone, your Android device, or you can listen to it on your computer, whatever works best for you. So what I would ask you to do is go to bartenderhq.com/audible. That will take you to a little page where you can sign up. You can get your free audiobook, and as I say, I recommend The Drunken Botanist. If that's not of interest to you and you would be interested in having a look at some other stuff, here are a couple of other recommendations for you that I've been through. There is the Home Distiller's Workbook, which is literally, as it sounds, all about distilling spirits at home. Check the legality of that in your own country before you try it. And Making Sense of Wine by Matt Kramer. Now, this is I think about 13 hours of audio on wines. I don't profess to know much about wines at all, but to increase your own personal knowledge on any subject related to bartending never hurts. So give it a try, and grab yourself a free audiobook from audible.com. But go to bartenderhq.com/audible to get your free trial and support the show. That's going to be it for this week, guys. So if you want to get that link download for the cocktail boxes, basically, to write out your cocktails in the easiest possible way to memorize these, go over to the Bartender HQ website and click on this week's podcast, and you'll be able to download it for free from there. You'll also get my 10 killer cocktails, so if you need some recipes to get started with, put into that cocktail system and find an easy way to learn them, it's all going to be right there for you guys. So I've been Eden-Sangwell, your bartenderhq.com podcast host, and I will see you again on next week's show. If you want to ask any questions, you can post them through SpeakPipe to me, or you can just post as a video, just like this, recorded on your cell phone, or this is just recorded on my iPhone. Post it on our Facebook page, and I would love to answer your questions. Dean, post me some videos of your Flair on our Facebook page, and I will feature you in one of the podcasts coming up soon. Thanks very much, guys, and I'll see you on next week's bartenderhq.com podcast.
Thanks for listening to the bartenderhq.com podcast. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at bartenderhq.